The killers that walk among us. What if I told you that some of the most terrifying serial killers in history were never caught? That even now, as you read this, their secrets remain hidden, buried in forgotten case files, unsolved evidence, and chilling crime scenes that haunt investigators to this day. These murders didn't just kill. They taunted, they vanished, and they left behind questions that may never be answered. Could they still be out there? Watching, waiting. Today, we're diving into the stories of 7 serial killers who were never caught. From cryptic letters to gruesome rituals, each case is more chilling than the last. Brace yourself. This is going to be a dark ride. 1. The Zodiac Killer, the cipher-writing phantom. Let's begin with one of the most infamous, unidentified serial killers in history, the Zodiac Killer. Between 1968 and 1969, a masked killer terrorized Northern California, taunting the media and police with cryptic letters, strange symbols, and disturbing phone calls. His twisted games and public taunts turned his crimes into one of the most frustrating and terrifying unsolved cases of all time. The first killings. It all began on December 20th, 1968, when a young couple, Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, were found shot near their car in a remote lover's lane. The scene was chaotic, bullet casings scattered, Betty Lou lying lifeless on the ground, and David barely clinging to life. But before police could identify a suspect, the killer struck again. 6 months later, on July 4th, 1969, another couple, Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau, were attacked while sitting in their car at a secluded location. The attacker approached with a flashlight, fired multiple shots, then calmly walked away. Michael miraculously survived, providing police with the first chilling description of the killer, a stocky man with short, curly hair, wearing glasses. But what came next changed everything. The letters and ciphers. Just weeks later, 3 major newspapers in California received nearly identical letters. Each was written in a strange, deliberate style and included a coded message. The writer claimed responsibility for the murders and gave himself a name that would haunt history. I am the Zodiac. He challenged police to crack his cryptic symbols, boasting that his identity was hidden within them. One of these ciphers was quickly solved by a schoolteacher and his wife, revealing a chilling message. I like killing people because it is so much fun. As months passed, more victims were attacked and more letters arrived. The Zodiac claimed at least 37 murders, though only 5 were officially confirmed. His final confirmed letter in 1974 simply ended with, "Me 37, SFPD 0. To this day, despite numerous suspects, books, and even amateur sleuths claiming to have solved the mystery, his identity remains unknown. Did he die? Did he stop? Or is he still out there? 2. Jack the Ripper, the Butcher of Whitechapel. Before the Zodiac Killer, there was another nameless murderer, one who terrified the streets of London over a century ago. Jack the Ripper. The murders that shook Victorian London. In 1888, in the dark, foggy alleys of Whitechapel, women began turning up dead, brutally slashed, their bodies mutilated in ways too horrifying to describe. The killer targeted sex workers, striking with gruesome precision, almost as if he had medical knowledge. His victims, known as the Canonical Five, included Mary Ann Nichols, August 31st, 1888, Annie Chapman, September 8th, 1888, Elizabeth Stride, September 30th, 1888, Catherine Eddowes, September 30th, 1888, Mary Jane Kelly, November 9th, 1888. Each murder was more violent than the last. Kelly, his final victim, was found in her one-room apartment, her body so severely mutilated that even hardened investigators were left speechless. The taunts and theories. Like the Zodiac, Jack the Ripper sent letters to the police. One, signed from hell, arrived with half a human kidney, allegedly from one of his victims. Who was he? Some believe he was a surgeon, others a butcher, and some even claim he was a member of the royal family. Despite hundreds of theories and suspects over the years, Jack the Ripper vanished without a trace. Was he caught for another crime? Did he flee the country? Or was he someone far more powerful than anyone could have imagined? 3. The Highway of Tears Killer, a ghost along the road. Imagine driving down a lonely stretch of road, surrounded by dense, endless forests, knowing that dozens of women and girls have vanished along that very path. This is the chilling reality of Canada's Highway of Tears, a 725-kilometer stretch of road in British Columbia, where at least 40 women have been murdered or disappeared since the 1970s. Who are the victims? Most of the victims were Indigenous women, many of whom were last seen hitchhiking due to lack of public transportation. Some were found murdered, while others were never seen again. Theories on the killer. Police believe multiple killers are responsible, but there's a strong possibility that at least one serial murderer has been hunting along this road for decades. with vast wilderness, little forensic evidence, and victims whose cases were often ignored. These crimes remain largely unsolved. Could the Highway of Tears killer still be out there? And how many more victims will it take before the truth is uncovered? What's next? More killers that still haunt us. So far, we've covered 3 of the most chilling unsolved cases, but we're not done yet. In part 2, we'll uncover more terrifying killers who vanished into the shadows, cases even more disturbing, with killers whose identities remain unknown to this day. Stay tuned. The nightmare is just beginning. The killers who vanished into the shadows. In part 1, we explored 3 terrifying cases of serial killers who were never caught: the Zodiac Killer, Jack the Ripper, and the Highway of Tears Killer. Each one left a trail of unanswered questions, unsolved mysteries, and eerie theories about their true identities. But the nightmare is far from over. In this chapter, we will dive into 4 more killers who disappeared into the abyss. Killers whose crimes remain unsolved, whose names remain unknown, and whose stories will leave you questioning just how many predators walk among us unseen. Brace yourself for the Long Island serial killer list, the beachside butcher, a hidden graveyard, a series of disturbing phone calls, a mystery that has haunted Long Island, New York for over a decade. This is the story of the Long Island serial killer list, a murderer who turned a quiet coastal area into his personal dumping ground. The first discovery, a call for help that led to a horror scene. On May 1st, 2010, 24-year-old Shannon Gilbert, an escort, frantically called 911 while running through the gated community of Oak Beach. She was hysterical, paranoid, and repeatedly told the dispatcher, "They are going to kill me." Then she vanished. Months later, police searching for Shannon near Gilgo Beach stumbled upon a far more chilling discovery: 4 bodies, wrapped in burlap, buried in the sand. None of them were Shannon, a serial killer's dumping ground. As police expanded their search, they uncovered more than 10 sets of human remains, scattered across multiple locations along Long Island's South Shore. The victims, mostly sex workers, had all disappeared under mysterious circumstances. The killer's pattern became clear. He targeted vulnerable women, mainly sex workers. He disposed of them near Gilgo Beach, where the sand and terrain helped conceal the bodies. He took pleasure in taunting victims' families, sometimes calling their loved ones to mock them. The haunting phone calls. One of the most disturbing aspects of this case came after the disappearance of Melissa Barthélemy, one of the victims. Shortly after she vanished in 2009, her younger sister, Amanda, began receiving taunting phone calls from an unknown man. The caller would say things like, "You'll never see her again," and "I killed Melissa." The calls were traced to crowded areas in Midtown Manhattan, suggesting the killer was careful not to be tracked. The voice was described as calm, almost emotionless, as if killing was nothing more than a casual event for him. A killer still at large. For years, police and FBI investigators have struggled to identify Lisk. Several suspects have been named, but no arrests have been made. Could he still be out there hunting? Theories range from a police officer or ex-military, due to the precise way he disposed of bodies, to a wealthy man living in the area. Who is Lisk, and why has he never been caught? 5. The monster of the Andes. The most prolific serial killer? Most serial killers claim 5, 10, maybe even 20 victims. But what if I told you one man claimed to have murdered over 300 people and was set free? Me Pedro Alonso Lopez, known as the monster of the Andes, a man who may hold the record for the highest confirmed victim count of any serial killer, and yet remains unaccounted for to this day. A childhood of horror that created a monster. Lopez was born in 1948 in Colombia, into an abusive and violent home. By the age of 8, he was abandoned and forced to survive on the streets. He was soon kidnapped by a man who sexually assaulted him, an event that Lopez later claimed awakened his own monstrous desires. By his 20s, Lopez began targeting young girls, specifically from poor, indigenous communities across Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. A chilling confession. In 1980, Lopez was finally caught when a failed abduction led police to him. What they discovered was pure evil. He confessed to murdering over 300 girls. He led police to mass graves containing dozens of bodies. He showed no remorse, describing how he would strangle his victims while looking into their eyes. And here's the most disturbing part. He was released. How did a monster walk free? Due to Ecuador's laws at the time, Lopez served only 14 years in prison, the maximum sentence. In 1994, he was released, deported to Colombia, and then vanished. Since then, no one knows where he is. Some reports claim he was rearrested in Colombia, while others suggest he fled to a new country. Could the monster of the Andes still be out there? 6. The I-70 killer, the Phantom of the Midwest. A quiet Midwestern highway turned into a hunting ground for a brutal executioner in the early 1990s. To this day, his identity remains a complete mystery. A killer who struck without warning. Between April and May of 1992, a man targeted small retail stores along Interstate 70, a major highway running through the heart of the U.S. His method was cold, calculated, and terrifying. He entered small businesses, usually with only one female employee employee working alone. He executed them with a single gunshot, a swift, emotionless kill. He never stole money or valuables, suggesting that the murders were the goal. A perfect ghost. Witnesses who briefly saw him described a white male, around 5 feet 7 inches, with sandy blonde hair and piercing eyes. But he was never identified. With no clear motive, no pattern in victim selection, and zero forensic evidence, police were left grasping at straws. Then, as suddenly as he appeared, the I-70 killer vanished. Where did he go? And more importantly, will he return? What comes next? The final chapter of Unsolved Evil. We've now uncovered 6 terrifying killers who disappeared without a trace. But we have one more name to discuss. One more case that might be the most disturbing of them all. In part 3, we will uncover the final killer on our list. A killer whose crimes were so horrifying, some believe he wasn't human at all. Stay tuned. The darkest mystery is yet to come. The final killer, a ghost in the darkness. We have uncovered 6 of the most chilling serial killers who were never caught. But there's one more. A name so terrifying that some believe he was not a person, but a legend. A phantom. A demon in human form. Who was he? What made his crimes so disturbing? And why was he never identified? Buckle up. We're about to step into the most terrifying case yet. 7. The Servant Girl Annihilator. America's first serial killer? Long before Jack the Ripper stalked the streets of London, another shadowy killer was already terrorizing Austin, Texas. His crimes were brutal. His identity, a complete mystery. A city gripped by fear. The year was 1884, and Austin was a quiet, growing city. But that peace was shattered when women, mostly African-American servant girls, began disappearing from their homes. What made these murders especially horrifying was the method of attack. Victims were dragged from their beds in the middle of the night. They were brutally beaten, stabbed, or hacked to death. Some were left partially undressed, with eerie patterns cut into their skin. The killer always vanished without a trace. The strange pattern. By 1885, the killings became even more brazen. The attackers stopped targeting just servant girls and started killing wealthy white women too. Austin was in full panic mode. The newspapers gave him a chilling name, the Servant Girl Annihilator. Theories and suspects. The biggest mystery, no one ever saw him. Witnesses claimed they saw a shadowy figure, but no description was ever clear. Police arrested several men, but none of them matched all the attacks. And then he vanished. Was he caught for another crime? Did he flee to another country? Some even believe he became Jack the Ripper, that he killed in Texas first, then moved to London to commit even more gruesome murders. To this day, his identity remains unknown. And with that, we reach the end of our journey